What's up, Dunwoody? Welcome back to the podcast all about Dunwoody, Georgia. My name is Matt Weber. Show is brought to you by Village Orthodontics, and what we do with the podcast is just go around, interview cool people in the Dunwoody community, and that's not what we're going to do today. Today, I'm super pleased to announce that this is Jeff Henderson, a new friend of mine. I was introduced by Karissa Tuttle, who is the Simply Done Donuts lady who came on the podcast about a month ago, maybe. And offered to introduce us, and that was super exciting to me. One of my favorite authors. I've been going to Buckhead Church for a long time. You have tie-ins with Chick-fil-A and Home Depot and all of the best Atlanta businesses, and so you've got a lot to say. Your book, Know What You're For, is just one of my favorites, and I've probably reread it, 10, 15 times. Brought you on, and we can talk about whatever you want, Jeff, but...
Well, yeah. Thanks, Matt. Man, I'm glad to be here. I love what you said when you said we typically interview cool people, but we're not going to do that today. We have Jeff on the...
Yeah, I thought about that. As I was saying it, I was like, it wasn't super smooth.
Well, I love it, man. That's actually true. There's nothing cool about me, but grateful for you. And, one of the reasons I wrote the book is for leaders like you to be encouraged for your community. I just feel like the way that you hear the word or the phrase, let's change the world. Okay, well, that's great. How do you do that? It really happens one community at a time. So what you're doing in Dunwoody, it's bigger than Dunwoody, but, it's one community at a time. Truett Cathy at Chick-fil-A used to say, we built the chicken business one sandwich and two pickles at a time. Yeah. So it's one community at a time. And grateful for what you're doing in Dunwoody. I'm an Atlanta native, and so, I get my hair cut in Dunwoody. I saw the Simply Done donut truck there. I texted Chris and said, what are y'all doing over here? Because they're over in Duluth near where I live. So Anyway, thanks for what you're doing. Honored to be here.
Yeah, I grew up in that area, and it was cool to see them out here. And I saw their truck on our social media at one point, and I was like, what is this? This is so cool. And then I kind of put together that, I'd heard of her business in your book, and so that was the point where I was like, all right, I got to reach out to her and see what this is all about. But yeah, you kind of want to talk about yourself, like a little bit. You were in marketing at Chick-fil-A, worked at Home Depot, and what I knew you from is from Buckhead Church, and since then you've kind of stepped away from ministry and more of like a consulting leadership for businesses. And I think that pretty much all business owners have a lot to learn from the type of stuff that you teach. How did you make that transition from all of those different businesses?
I was actually with a friend of mine yesterday with Chris Clark, who's the CEO of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and he said, "So, did you have like this plan for your career? Kind of outline plan?" I'm like, man, I would love to tell you that this was this well-oiled plan, but no. Again, speaking of Truett Cathy, Truett taught me to take advantage of unexpected opportunities. And it's interesting, a friend of mine who knew Truett well as well said he never heard Truett use the word strategy, but he always used the word opportunity. And so I think that's, one of the things I share with people is you don't have to figure out the rest of your life. You just have to figure out what to do next. And that's been kind of a series. It kind of looks like a meandering, and sometimes it may be, but it's, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. And that doesn't mean that every opportunity you chase or go after, you have to have wise people around you to go, no, I don't, that might be the right thing, but it might be the wrong time.
Right.
John Maxwell says, if it's the right decision at the wrong time, it's the wrong decision. And so it's the law of timing. But I grew up in the Atlanta area. I'm a preacher's kid, so I promised myself I would never do that, so I would never work at a church. And so I worked at a church for 18 years. So if your listeners get nothing out of this, Matt, they may want to write down, never say you are never going to do anything.
Right.
But, I grew up in Atlanta, big sports fan. We haven't had a lot to cheer for over the years here in Atlanta, but it's marketing and regional marketing efforts. But Wendy and I were just minding our own business, and I got invited to a leadership conference through Chick-fil-A, and it was hosted by a church in Chicago. And that's where I felt this call to maybe one day I'm going to help start a church. So fast forward, we eventually leave Chick-fil-A to help be a part of the early days of Buckhead Church, where you attend, and then eventually I was there for 10 years and left that to help start 2 other churches. in the Atlanta area, just north. We're from Gwinnett County, and so North Point Ministries, which is what I was a part of for those years, they were going to launch a church in Gwinnett, and I was asked to help launch those. So, but then while I was there, I wrote. We came up with this 4 strategy, which is 2 questions: what do you want to be known for in your business or your nonprofit or your organization, or really your life? And then the second question is, what are you known for? And when the answers to those 2 questions match, when your vision meets the reality of what you're doing, then customers will grow your business for you. It's that simple, and it's that hard. And then, lo and behold, a lot of churches around, when we launched this at 4 Gwinnett, a lot of churches around the world started doing that, and started getting T-shirts and coffee mugs in the mail from 4 Guatemala, 4 El Paso, 4 Charlotte. And eventually it just got so big that we thought, this might be that next season. So I really believe in side hustles. So I launched something. When the book came out, I launched something called Business Breakfast, where I would travel around at churches, but do a business breakfast at a church. It wasn't anything about, the Bible or anything. It was just, here's 2 questions that grow your business. And it just kind of took off. And so that we eventually ended up leaving the church in September of 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic, which I wouldn't recommend for people.
Good timing.
That's been 2.5 years, and it's been, I was in South Dakota last week and Connecticut the week before. And so just following that, this unexpected opportunity. But there's a lot that for-profit leaders could learn from nonprofit leaders. And there's a lot that nonprofit leaders can learn from for-profit leaders. And I've been in both of those worlds, and I've been blessed to work for thriving organizations. And I was challenged by a mentor to, hey, tell us what you learned in both those worlds. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now. I just want to help people, especially businesses. I want to help them grow purpose and profit at the same time, because in today's world, doing good is good for business. And then for nonprofits, I want them to be really clear about what you want to be known for.
Yeah, and the word "for" that whole situation was, you put a sign in the ground, and that was your marketing, and it just said 4 Gwinnett. People drove past that sign and thought, what the heck is this? What is 4 Gwinnett? Had no mention of a church, no mention of yourself or anybody, Andy Stanley. You could put Andy Stanley on the sign and people would have stopped their car. But, just putting 4 Gwinnett, because that is what you're for. And you guys kind of put on for all these different businesses, these local businesses, which is kind of my game plan as well. I mean, I've done 230 episodes of this podcast, and it's not talking about me most of the time. It's talking about other people. And I own a restaurant in Lawrenceville, actually. It's a little pizza place. And that is our most effective marketing, is when we talk about the community, because that's something that everybody in your area has in common. So, if I just start talking about real estate in Dunwoody, people might listen. But if I talk about just Dunwoody, everybody's going to listen. I mean, nobody's going to turn that off, unless I'm too obnoxious, which happens every once in a while. But
well, it's
overall,
it's one of the reasons I put in the book. If a business was a person, many businesses would be considered narcissists, because the business is always talking about themselves. And now, do we need to say, hey, here's our pizza special, or here's, we need to talk about what we're doing. But too often it's 99% about the business and maybe 1% about the community. And when we launched Gwinnett Church in the early days, I said, hey, if 10 years from now, if the church decided to close down, I would want the community to rise up and protest and go, no, you can't close down. If you close down, we all suffer. And that's not just true for a church. That should be true for businesses. And it breaks my heart when I see businesses shut down. So, in fact, our mutual friend Karissa with Simply Done, I just walked by our business one day in downtown Duluth and thought, wow, this looks really cool. So I went in and just introduced myself and said, I'm the pastor of this church here, and how can we help you? And I said, hey, could we feature you on our Instagram page and just say, hey, here's Karissa, here's what she's doing, go buy donuts. And she said, how much does this cost? And I said, it doesn't cost anything. Well, do you want me to put flyers in the door about go to Gwinnett Church? No, I don't really. No, you don't need to. Then why are you doing this? And I love that question. Why are you doing this? And it's much like what you're doing. Why are you doing this podcast? You could be doing a whole lot of other things. This is taking your time, but you're like, well, I want to add value to Dunwoody. What you're doing with the parade, for crying out loud. That's not necessarily in the scope of your day job, but in many ways it is, because you want to be for your community. And so
Yeah.
all of that really is in many ways, it's a test of the heart. A lot of businesses, a lot of organizations talk a good game. And that's why I told when we launched For Gwinnett, I said, hey, I'm a marketing guy, but we can't let this be a marketing slogan. We have to truly live this out. And that's why a lot of our leadership team meetings, we would actually meet in the community. We would go to restaurants. We would go to, out and meet. And it would be noisy and crazy. I mean, we'd go to like a Maple Street in downtown Duluth, which is near Karissa as well. And it's crazy. It's, what did you say? But I'm like, but look at all these people. This is why we're here. We get stuck in this office over here. And that's, Buckhead, that was my concern, is you go in this building, you go up, there's an elevator, you work all day, and you go down the elevator, you get in your car and you go home. And you've never once interacted with the community. That's not why we're here, just to run an organization. And so what you're doing is really, really important.
Yeah, and you hear that, the more people that you help, it kind of comes back to you. But at least with real estate, you have to kind of wait for somebody to ask for help, or, you can bother them until they need to buy or sell their house, but you're still waiting for them to ask for help. And so you kind of have to go around that and realize how you can help before somebody asks for it. I just think that that's so important in every business, especially like community-centered businesses. Well,
and I think in your business, particularly, I mean, you're an expert in real estate, not me, but when you have a customer and they sell something to you, you go on to the next one. Staying in touch with that customer is really important. And
right.
This is what I see you doing so well, but I see a lot of businesses don't do very well. And that is, they don't stay in touch with their customer. And here's why. A business is no longer what it tells customers it is. A business is what customers tell other customers it is. So this is why social media can be a great business building strategy if you understand that it's not about me, that I'm going to follow my existing clients, even somebody, let's take residential real estate. Somebody, I sold a house to or helped them buy this house 3 years ago. Well, if their son just graduated from high school and you say, congratulations, on the graduation, cheering y'all on, and then they happen to bump into somebody in the grocery store and they're like, hey, do you know a good real estate agent? And you just commented on their social media post. It's just a way to say we're for you. And Truett used to say, if you help enough people get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want. And it's not that we're manipulating people, but again, doing good is good for business. And we want to be businesses and business leaders that are encouraging to people, even people that are not selling to. It's just uncanny to me how that eventually comes around to bless the business. Yeah.
It's funny when as you're going through, I'm thinking of stories that you've told. I think that what makes your book so enjoyable, or both your books so enjoyable, is the stories that you tell and how like relatable you are with just simple little Johnny Swim stories, or Simply Done Donut stories. I think that's really cool. And something that pops into my head a lot is your tour at Pixar, where you knew you were going to California. Stop me if I tell the story wrong. You were going to California and you thought, oh, let's try to visit the Pixar studios. That's something that my daughter would really enjoy. So you wrote the letter asking if you could tour this studio that doesn't give tours. And what did you say? It took like a month to get it back. That's kind of the thought process. When I asked you to come on the podcast, I was like, this may or may not work, but you got to shoot your shot, at this point. And so, there's a lot of little things that I've taken from the books that are really cool. And then what's the other one? What to Do Next is your second book. I've read that a few times now, and that's something that's kind of special to me. As I'd done pizza, a restaurant owner for 25 years, and switching into real estate, it was, you don't want to completely leave it. You don't want to step away from it. You don't want to burn bridges and that kind of thing. And, I'm still kind of going back and forth. And so What to Do Next is, and with the brand that I've built here with What's Up Dunwoody, What to Do Next really spoke to me as well. Can you get into that one a little bit?
Sure. And
I guess you already did really at the beginning.
Well, it was interesting in any idea, there's the life cycle of an idea. There's the birth of the idea. There's the death of the idea. But if you keep pushing, there's the resurrection and then the ascension of the idea. And this book really started out with, it was a different title called What to Do in Your 30s, because I had so many, when I left.
That's a good one too.
I'm sorry?
That's a good one too.
Yeah. Well, when I left Gwinnett Church to do what I'm doing now, I had a lot of 30-something friends of mine say, hey, we love to figure, they kind of made me feel old. Like, when we get to be your age, we want to be able to, and so how did you figure this out? And so that was the working title. But my publisher and my agent was like, that's kind of a niche. And I'm like, well, there's riches in the niches. So you have this debate, but then my agent said, hey, what about, just, you have a series of next in your world. What about what to do next? And I'm like, that's it. So, one of the things when I go speak on this is I ask people, how many of you know someone in your life who's trying to figure out what to do next? It could be professionally, it could be personally, it could be where they live, and everybody raises their hands. And I said, all right, don't raise your hand in case your boss is next to you, but how many of you would, if you could raise your hand, say that might be me? And they're always, it may not be where you are right now, but at some point there is a season of next. Where you are right now, you will eventually leave in some form or fashion. And how you finish that current season actually connects to how you begin that next season. And so this was really my story of trying to figure out, how did I figure out the next move? And people ask me, how did you eliminate risk in this? And I said, that's not the world I live in. You don't eliminate risk, but you can shrink it. You can manage it. And instead of a leap off the Grand Canyon, rather than be Tom Cruise driving a motorcycle off a cliff, that you don't have to do that, but you can jump over the mud puddle. You might get wet and muddy, and it may not be pleasant, but you're not plunging thousands of feet below. So when life is uncertain, I'm trying to help people find their next best step. And that's all you get. And that's one of the things, especially when I speak to 20-somethings or high school students, we put this pressure on them. And the pressure many times comes in the form of a question, and that is, what is your major going to be? That's a terrible question to be asking someone who's 19 years old. Because, that's why people change their majors sometimes 2 or 3 times. They don't know. What we should be asking them is, what are your strengths? Do you know what your gifts are? If you don't, let's put you into an environment where you can figure that out. And that's what happened when I was with the Braves. I was in the promotions department. They threw all sorts of things at me, advertising sales, which I was awful at. But I learned I'm not good in sales. But then they said, hey, could you write promotional scripts? Could you come up with ideas for, Coca-Cola sponsorship? Well, I was really good at that stuff. And I began to discover, here are my strengths. I'm a good writer. I come up with ideas. I'm a pretty good leader. Don't put me in a sales position, though. So
I feel you.
We need to be telling people is, what are your strengths? And we just put this huge weight on people at 19. Got to figure out the rest of your life. Good luck. But what I tell people who are 19, 20, and 21, I say, let me tell you a secret. There are people that are way older than you, and they're still wondering the same thing. And we feel like there has to be one solution. And one of the best things I realized a few years ago is that it is okay. This isn't true for everybody, but I think it's true for a lot of people. It's okay to check more than one career box. You can own a pizza restaurant. You can be in real estate. You can do a podcast. You can launch a parade like you're doing. Right now I have a variety of different revenue streams in my business. It's not just one. And now focus is something I believe in, so you got to be focused in on that. But so I think just trying to, and that's what the book was. I wanted to be this practical step that this journey will help you figure out. I'm not going to tell you what to do 5 to 10 years from now. I can tell you what to do and how to figure out if this next decision is the right decision for you. And one of the pivotal moments for me in this journey is 2 months after I left Gwinnett. This was kind of, the book's doing really well. I'm getting invited to speak, but I don't quite know what I'm doing, And I was speaking at this conference with John Maxwell, who's been a huge friend and mentor. John's sold a gazillion books, and he's written more on leadership than the second, third, and fourth leadership authors combined. So this is the leadership guru. So I'm at this conference 2 months after I'd left, and John said, I never had a clear vision. I just kept moving forward. And I mean, everything just stopped, Matt. And I'm like, wait, I understand that a mere mortal like me, I mean, what do I know? I don't know what I'm doing, but John Maxwell didn't have a clear vision. He just kept moving forward. And I thought, I can do that. I can keep moving forward. In the good days and the bad days, I can pick myself up and keep trying. And eventually I'll figure this out. With the Lord's help, I'll figure this out. And so that's one of the things. And I put my cell phone in the book on both books, and which my wife.
Yeah, how many people actually call you?
Well, I put text me. So I'm an introvert. So I picked this idea up from Bob Goff, and Bob's like an off the chart extrovert guy, and he put call me. And I was speaking at a conference with Bob a few months ago, and I mean, his phone was just ringing off the hook, and he answers it all the time. I didn't say call me, I said text me. And I'll get a text. I get 1 or 2 texts a day, and it's fantastic. But it's just, hey, I'm here to help. And people go, hey, can you send me this illustration in the book? Can you, what would you do if and so it's been great. But so that's really the purpose of the book, is to help people, or help people who know people. Let's help them figure out what to do next, because we need everybody to be fully engaged. And we've got a broken world out there, and we need people to engage and help and serve. And one of the ways you do that is figure out what to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, and isn't it fun having a whole lot of things on your plate? I mean, different, especially with the pandemic. I mean, real estate melted down for a few months. And so luckily I had the restaurant. Restaurant has problems at times. You can kind of switch over to real estate. And I don't know. It's cool. As somebody with ADD, it's nice for me because I can kind of just bounce around and talk to everybody and, develop habits that are going to eventually pay off for you. And all the different jobs that you've had, I mean, you became an expert at 4 different things, 10 different things. And, it's all kind of coming together now as a speaker. It's really cool to see what you're doing now compared to those early days in Buckhead Church, where I remember you getting on stage at the what was it, a Publix, an old Publix that
Harris
Buckhead Church
Teeter
started at?
Harris
Teeter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, one of the things I discovered there is that, I mean, it seemed like a weird career move. In some ways it was, I guess, but, to go from a multi-billion-dollar chicken business to, doing a startup church deal. But I quickly discovered, it's pretty much the same issues here that it was there. It's leadership. Yeah. It's leading people. It's leading opportunities. And there's a lot more similarities in organizations than there are differences. And so it was just, and again, I think, to quote John Maxwell, everything rises and falls on leadership. I don't care if it's a nonprofit, entrepreneur, real estate, multi-billion-dollar chicken business. Everything rises and falls on leadership. I can walk into an organization and tell there's a leader here, or I can walk into a restaurant and go, they're not leading well. And it really all comes down to leadership. But I do believe in side hustles, and you have to be focused, and you have to be, I believe in keeping the main thing, but part of the main thing is learning. And I never blinked twice when I had a staff member come up to me and say, hey, I want to start a side real estate business, or start a side travel agent business. I'm like, hey, that's great. I mean, as long as you can do your job and do it well here and then do that, that's awesome. Because here's what I know. You're going to learn something over there, and you're going to bring it over here. And I know a lot of leaders don't like that, and you got to be careful with that. And things can get, if you're not careful, things can get out of control. But at the same time, if you're not careful and everybody has to work totally here, then you get insider-itis, and the change outside the organization is happening quicker than the change inside the organization. And that's the recipe for disaster. And so I love people going out into this world and trying to figure things out. That's why I loved studying businesses. We would bring business leaders into our staff meetings at the church, and they would say, Jeff, I haven't read the Bible in you. I don't even know. I'm like, leave the Bible stuff to us. We got that. I want you to come in here and tell us, how's your business running? What are you excited about? What are you fearful about? What is your customer and team culture like? And what got you to where you are? Just tell us your story. We'll figure out everything else, in terms of we'll handle the Bible stuff. And it was just so fun to have these business leaders come in and influence our young staff. I was the oldest person on staff, and just influence our young staff. And that's one of the things I told our team is I feel like my responsibility is to serve you and to leverage the network that the Lord has blessed me with to bring people in and say, here's an amazing, Karissa Tuttle, and we're going to let her talk to you today. Or here's her donuts. Here's what she's doing. Or a Sid and Ann Mashburn who own a clothing store. Let's hear from them. And so I love side hustles. If you can do it, it takes some strategy to that, but it's so helpful to learn. And so many of the side hustles that I started 15 years ago are now full stream revenue parts of what I do now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember when you first started doing the business leadership courses, and I thought, what is this? That you guys announced it at church, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, going into the business world, and here you are now. It worked. Well, and you're helping a lot of people, too.
The church and the business world, for whatever reason, they don't talk. I don't think there's any animosity there. They just don't really talk.
It is. They seem separate, right?
Yeah, and I feel like, and that's another influence of John Maxwell. John is able to just, easily walk into these different streams of influence: church, business, government, entertainment, media, education. It's just phenomenal. And that's one of the reasons, one of my goals for the 4 book was to get into public schools. I wanted this book to be taught in public schools. And it's been fun. I've spoken to so many public school forums as a pastor or retired or, pastor, whatever you call it. So that was fun for me. I want to be able to influence other streams than just one. And I feel like we can do that.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time giving us 30 minutes to talk. This is wonderful. This is the highlight of my week, my month. So I really appreciate it. And thanks for doing all the good that you do around the community and teaching other people to lead their communities. I've taken a lot from it. I want other people to check out the books as well.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And thanks for all that you're doing for Dunwoody.